What's the worst thing you've witnessed at a wedding? I've only been to one wedding, and it was Dad's cousin's wedding. My dad's uncle, the groom's father, did a toast when the groom and bride were at the altar. Is this normal? Everyone around me seemed confused, and he said, "I'm glad I made it out here today. I just want you guys to know that I have cancer and I'm going to die soon. Congrats to my son and his beautiful bride. Enjoy your time." Everyone was in complete silence. It was the most awkward thing I've possibly ever witnessed. FWIW, this was in 2008 and the groom's father is still alive. Only horrible for one person. The main hostess for the reception of about 30 guests. She carried in the 3-tier wedding cake, rather than using a cart. She not only dropped it, but fell face first into it on the floor. First dead silence, then a few giggles, and then her emotional breakdown like I have never seen before. She was completely devastated from both the embarrassment and ruining that special moment. We all eventually assured her that we're half drunk and don't care about the cake. The best part was that she easily collected $1,000 more in tips than she would have had that not happened. Ex-girlfriend of the groom showed up at the wedding, uninvited and drunk. He broke up with her 10 years earlier, and has not seen her in over 8 years. She was loud and saying very perverted thing about what she wanted to do to the groom. The bride steps up, goes all out and punches the ex in the face, knocks the ex out cold. The bride we know is a normally calm and peaceful person. A few of us carry the ex out of the reception and drop her at her apartment about 20 minutes away. Bride told my wife that there is nothing that will ruin my wedding day. Bride and groom were 2 hours late to the wedding. Neither one of them has a license, but had to have a wedding out in the woods. They never thought to contact anyone and ask for a ride to their wedding. Of course they didn't pay the cell phone bill and it got shut off. Didn't matter because there was no cell reception where we were anyway. My aunt's second wedding. She married the guy who lived 2 houses down from her. That's not the issue, the worst part was the toast at the reception. Another neighbor got up, "I want everyone to raise their glasses." 15 years ago, we all moved into this neighborhood married to the wrong people. By the end of the summer, we will all be married to the right people. Came to find out 8 couples had gotten divorced and remarried within the neighborhood, or as I call it, played musical spouses. We left very quickly. Definitely my friend's wedding last year. They had only known each other for 6 months or so before they got married. She was Mormon, he was atheist. We all thought it was really weird. The parents of the bride and groom hated each other. 2 moms got into a verbal argument, then it became physical. I don't know who made the accusation, but one said they're only getting married because she's knocked up. And she popped a baby out 6 months later trying to pass it off as a preemie. Yeah, no. My dad taking pictures at my brother's wedding. It doesn't sound bad, but he was getting in the way of the photographer my brother hired. Every pic he tried to take my dad was right beside him, inching him out and pushing him out of the way. My brother and mom were both really pissed at him. They had practiced their opening dance, a tango, in a large room. The wedding venue was a long and narrow, small room, so 1 step forward in tango style, 3 steps forward but trampling in place due to guests sitting in their way, 3 steps backward trampling in place again, to take 2 steps back to reach the other side guest and start trampling in place again. And right in the middle of all this, the kitchen starts bringing out food. They hadn't served any food before, so this was after complaints from most guests about being hungry. So I have video and photos. I was photographer of the couple trampling, with no guest at all watching them, not even the bride's mother, who was destroying a pack of fries with her back turned to the couple's opening dance. The DJ got so drunk that she couldn't even stand. She didn't have the bride's wedding song, so a group of people all joined hands and tried to sing the song, some random country crap, for her, and she just stood in the middle of the circle crying in her dress, and no one knew the lyrics. And her father got wasted and started a fight which ended with him destroying a stop sign with his fists. Let's not forget that us in the wedding party got picked up in a NASCAR stretch limo. Classy, classy, classy Florida. My fiancé's old friend's wedding last year. They had a pyramid of cupcakes for guests and a small cake for the bride and groom. And people started coming up and grabbing cupcakes before the bride and groom cut their cake. My fiancée and her friends included. They tried to offer me one, but I refused to touch it before the couple cut their cake. They knew why, but everyone else is grabbing one. And we want one before they're gone. This happened at my wedding last year, but up until you told this story I didn't really think anything of it. The only thing I was a tiny bit upset about was that all the Reese's Pieces cupcakes were gone by the time my husband went to get one, and those are his favorite. Sad face. A college friend met a girl through a dating service. They had a very rocky on and off relationship. Still, they end up getting engaged and we attend the wedding. Other college buddies and I make jokes about how long marriage will last. During the ceremony, when the couple is lighting the unity candle, the wick actually splits in two, leaving two separate flames. Like the universe was telling them this ain't happening. However, it's been over 20 years now and they are still together and going strong. It was only marginally bad and mostly funny, but at some point during the ceremony, the best man took a step backward on the altar to allow the priest to walk past. Right into a candle that was behind him. Ended up setting his light blue, yeah, this was the 90s, suit jacket on fire. It was quickly put out, happily with no injury to him other than a lost deposit on a tux and a charred shirt. Except he spent the rest of the day looking like he'd taken a mortar round directly between the shoulder blades. Much hilarity. It was the wedding social, but two guys were fighting over who was going to pay. Both wanted to pay the $15,000 catering bill. Huge brawl started. I just sat there sipping my drink, pinky up saying, but that's none of my business. Not witnessed by me, but my ex-GFS mother, a relative of the bride, had a heart attack while dancing traditional Greek songs, like a big half circle of people running. She was leading the circle. She died on the spot. Rest of the party was cancelled. It actually made the news. My cousin got married ages ago. She was a religious Jew and had apparently made 100% sure the DJ didn't play the traditional wedding march as it was made by a ~Nazi ~anti-Semite. Strike one, they played that song. There is video of her looking furious as it began. Strike two, the rings didn't fit. Not like this is tight, but like I am a size 8 and this is a 4. Her finger started changing colors due to poor circulation. Strike three, the officiant got their names wrong. Strike four, the officiant took a step back on the dais, and there was no more dais. He took a nasty spill off the stage, mid-ceremony. My cousin and her husband have been together for almost 25 years now, so obviously these became funny stories to tell and not disasters. At one wedding I attended, there was a ceremonial gifting of a shotgun to the married couple from the family of the groom. Came out of nowhere and the entire room was sat in stunned silence until the most awkward "are we supposed to clap?" applause nervously quivered into existence. What's scary is that both the bride and groom are extremely heavy drinkers, borderline alcoholics, and the groom in particular gets very aggressive when drunk. I can't think of a worse couple to give a firearm to. To their credit, the wedding was gorgeous apart from that. Great food and drink, stunning location, and killer cocktails. Wedding went well, reception went well for the most part. Various family members gave speeches, along with members of the bridal party. It was a non-traditional wedding, so the maid of honor was a man. At his turn at the microphone, he basically confessed his love for the bride, and explained how the groom would not be able to treat her as well as he could. My mom used to work at a catering company. The company would make an announcement about what food would have nuts in them and other things. Well, apparently this one time they announced the food on lady walked right up and ate like a peanut butter cookie and went into anaphylaxis. So they called an ambulance and she died on the way to the hospital. Apparently she knew full well what was in it. The groom was a pastry chef by trade. As you can imagine, he went full bore on his own wedding cake. This thing was a masterpiece. Astoundingly beautiful and intricate, and unlike anything you've ever seen. And the couple's friends are also about 50% pastry chefs. Lots of professional bakers in the place. All of whom were dying to see this piece of culinary art. The caterer's assistant dropped the cake in the kitchen before it ever saw the light of day. The only people who saw the cake in its full glory were me, the groom, the best man, the caterer, and the groom's baking staff. I was watching when it was dropped, and the person who dropped it said, "Well, we'll just serve the sheet cake." There was no sheet cake. They scooped up most of it, and served it with a giant spoon. My cousin got married last summer. It was all shaping up to be a beautiful day. A, the groom substituted awfully for lawfully in his vows. This was more hilarious than offensive. B, the best man was beaten up by his drunk girlfriend at the reception. He promptly broke up with her, understandably saying that if their genders had been reversed it would have been completely unacceptable. She didn't understand his reasoning. They got back together a few weeks later. We still worry about him. I I have a lot of cousins. Last year my female cousin got married. She wanted a traditional ceremony, so they opted for a Catholic church with a minister. Well, the minister thought it was appropriate to talk about suicide, rape, adultery, and the X-Men movie right before the vows. It was so inappropriate our family had our mouths hanging open the entire time. I went to a wedding where part of the head table collapsed. It was 3 or so long tables next to each other. I guess the table on the far right wasn't secure, and at some point gave way. Nothing huge happened. You could see the shock on the bride's face, but it was cleaned up and the evening was great. I talked to the groom a few weeks after, and he had said to his bride something along the lines of, "Look, it happened. There's no changing that. We can either let this ruin the wedding, or get past it and have a great reception." They're awesome folks. Glad to say that was the worst thing I've seen at a wedding. My wedding was a redneck nightmare. My husband decides while we are in Kentucky for Christmas, we should get married. It's 30 below zero and I'm wearing a short-sleeved white dress. We go to the courthouse and find out it's gonna be half-priced cause my husband is the judge's second cousin. To top it off, my father-in-law dropped us off at the door so he could go play poker. After sitting in a half-frozen hallway waiting for the father-in-law to finish, he finally picks us up only to tell us Eddie's cousin gave us a wedding gift, which happened to be 3 mason jars of moonshine. Follow this by my father-in-law taking us to Wendy's for burgers afterwards, cause he don't think we will last long anyway. My cousin had his wedding at a family member's house, which backed up to large swamp area. It was the middle of summer so everything had dried out. During the reception, I heard someone yelling, and turned around to see one of my degenerate second cousins come running up the path from the swamp area, followed by 10-foot-high flames. Turned out he wanted to see if a cattail, the plant, could catch on fire. It could, and the bride and groom were told that they would be charged $10,000 if the fire department had to come out again. Edit, clarified a plant versus an animal tail. Probably not the answer you were looking for, but people who have obviously Googled best man speeches and are reciting the same contrived impersonal shite that I've seen at countless weddings. I've honestly seen 10 to 15 weddings where they do the "this is the last time you'll have the upper hand" thing, or "sorry, I can't read your handwriting" to the groom after singing his praises. I've been to a wedding where the priest called the bride by the wrong name throughout the entire ceremony, Elizabeth instead of Kristen, and one where the groom's parents showed up halfway through the wedding, but neither of these things has made me cringe the way I do at these awful speeches. Edit, thank you kind stranger. Glad I'm not the only one who feels this way. My father-in-law goes up to give the speech for the parents of the groom, my wife's brother's wedding. He is rambling on, then starts talking about how he's always been super attracted to his son's now wife. You could have heard an ant scratching it as it went so silent. I wanted to smack him. My wife and I went to her cousin's costume wedding. We got there 45 minutes early, and as we are walking through the parking lot, the bride storms out of the hotel, yells the wedding is off, gets in her car and drives off, leaving 20 or so costumed people in the parking lot, while being threatened by the groom's family that if we, her family, don't leave they will call the cops. Fast forward a couple years. The groom-to-be marries my wife's sister and becomes my brother-in-law. Edit, the cousin did not attend. To make matters worse, they have a kid, and he pays her child support every month. There was no costume theme, which was great, cause there was an elderly couple dressed as horny devils, I think. Eddie too messed up the last edit. My mom told me a story where she was in her teens at a wedding. Anyways, one of the mothers in the corner randomly stood up and said, "I have an announcement to make, little Jimmy's going through puberty." That kid was super embarrassed for a long time about it. That mother is pretty stupid to say such a thing at wedding. This is funny. This happened to a good friend of mine and her husband. They've been married for over 30 years. They are just as happy as they can be. The groom did not tell the bride what his full name was. She called him by his middle name because everybody does. At the wedding, in the middle of the vows, when the preacher said, "Do you take this man Gaylord Jesse?" my friend in shock shouted, "Gaylord?" Everybody giggled and the wedding continued. At the end of the vows, when the preacher says, "I'd like to present to you Mr. and Mrs., and the couple happily marches down the aisle, my friend's brand new husband stepped on the train of her dress, tripped and fell down doing a forward roll down the aisle, hit his head on a pew, and almost knocked himself unconscious. They had this host of the wedding, and before the ceremony, he went to the bride and groom separately and asked them to write down their best memory. They had been dating for 5 or 6 years, and they had both been previously married. After the main ceremony, that host took the microphone and started to talk about some things that he had learned about the newly married couple. Then he brought out the best memory that each one had written down. The bride wrote about their trip to England. The groom wrote about their trip to Paris and how their midnight kiss at the Eiffel Tower was magical. She had never been to Paris. At my sister's wedding. My auntie has MS and can't really pick her feet up as she walks. She was walking past the dance floor, but didn't realize it was one of those temporary ones that get laid on top of carpet, so I raised an inch or so off the ground. She tripped over and fell straight over. Her reaction times are slow, so she couldn't get her hand up, falling face first onto her wine glass that she had in her hand. It happened right in front of me, so I saw the whole thing. I have never seen so much blood in my life. I couldn't believe how instant all the blood shot out. It was like a manga cartoon. One of the most horrific things I've ever seen. Me. I was the best man for my brother's wedding and I got way too drunk before my big speech. I thought it went great, but apparently I slurred pretty much the whole way through and then blacked out. The groomsmen took me outside to get some fresh air, but I thought they were being dicks and I tried to fight them. I got kicked out of my brother's wedding and I wasn't there to sign as a witness for their marriage certificate. It was pretty bad. Now, we are all good. I think. No one really brings it up anymore. I work in a wedding venue, normally on the bar. We don't have any security or door staff. Although we are told that if it kicks off we do not have to get involved, it's pretty fun, normally harmless and easy to split up. Apart from this one time the bride's stepfather tried to hit her with a chair and I had to stop it. That was probably the craziest, or some ginger guy trying to bite the DJ. Went to a wedding where I and my wife were the only ones there. Within the previous 48 hours the bride and groom had called it off and we were the only ones of a 100+ people not to get a call. Then we spent their wedding gift on a nice dinner since we were dressed for it. I was at a wedding where the mother of the bride kept on trying to hide in the group pictures and was generally rude and pouting, as well as the sister of the bride kept on jumping in front of people, including the married couple, as their picture was being taken. She is nearly 30. Oh wait, that was my wedding. I witnessed the photographer's cell phone going off not once, not twice, but 3 times during the ceremony. For after the ceremony I saw someone buy the bride a prairie fire drink, which caused her to puke it, and the previous 3 raspberry kamikazes all down the front of her wedding dress. I also saw a 20 or 21-year-old who decided he wanted to have everyone on the dance floor do beer bongs. I escorted him to his table as he was trying to get the great-grandmother of the bride to do one. Well, at my wedding someone brought a newborn and put it in my honeymoon suite, without telling or asking anyone. I went in the room to puke in the trash next to the bed, got a bit drunk, everyone was, and puked inches away from the baby. Then I almost smothered it when I rolled onto the bed in the dark. So that was unique. Father of the groom died. Not at the wedding, but he started having chest pain and eventually got a ride to the ER, and he died only 30 minutes later. It sucked because it ruined the wedding reception and their honeymoon was cancelled. The worst part is the pictures. He was there smiling and posing with everyone and the dude was dead within hours. Worst and most hilarious. At the reception, the pastor who wed the couple gave a long and completely inappropriate speech. It was about how the groom, a UPS driver, would deliver packages to old ladies and how the old ladies really loved his package. Everyone laughed thinking he was joking, but he just kept going on about how old ladies loved his packages and waited for him to deliver them. He was being serious and was confused as to why people were laughing, so he kept repeating it like that would somehow clear things up. My mother-in-law wanted to renew their vows on my husband and my wedding day. We had a destination wedding in Punta Cana, and she said since her whole family will be there it would be perfect. I said I didn't mind as long as she didn't do it the same day we were getting married. She ultimately declined because it was going to cost too much money to do it on her own. Mind you, my husband and I paid for our entire wedding ourselves, so it's not like they were paying for it. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.